are 10 myths about the US economy that you likely have heard from Internationalization before. So welcome back to the Travel Reports. Today we're going to go over exactly why Internationalization channels sell fear and why I sell knowledge realistically. I am very data driven, and this is the video as to why exactly that is. So if you are looking for high quality, reasonable length uploads for business, finance, and globalization, I am your host, and I hope that you will consider subscribing. Irrespective, let's get into 10 reasons why there is fear-based advertising and 10 things that realistically that create fear but are untrue about the United States. Number one is that the United States is losing ground globally. While this is technically true, it's also untrue, as the United States has been losing ground globally due to globalization since the 90s. Many people will sell you that the West is failing, the West is, not growing. The United States has outpaced the European Union for large parts of the last decade. And last few decades, in fact. The United States has been a massive growth economy, despite being the largest economy on earth, because they have large export bases, and they have one of the largest, if not the largest, domestic economies in the world. I believe, I'll put an article up if I'm wrong, but I believe the United States domestic economy is as large as the Chinese economy, which is the second largest GDP in the world. Now, the second thing is China is beating the US. Now, this is hard to quantify. However, China and the US are playing vastly different games. The United States is trying to hold on to soft power, whereas China is trying to grow global wealth and global influence. Those are two very different goals, and they come with two very different approaches, of course, to how to maintain that grip on power. Now, I'm not particularly pro-China or pro-US, but if we look at purely the growth metrics, both the Chinese and the United States have done extremely well, extraordinarily well in growing their economies. Number three is that US businesses are losing dominance or permanence. This is beyond untrue, and the United States actually has been growing in market share of businesses owned. And this is particularly true because inequality is growing in the United States, and there are simply not enough assets in the United States to buy for it to be worthwhile to not own assets outside. If you look at Apple or Microsoft or Nvidia, some of the largest companies in the world, they are still based in the United States. However, the vast majority of the Fortune 500 companies are based in the US. And 100% of the Fortune 500 companies have at least some presence in the United States. So, US dominance in business is not going down. Number four, business is hard to do in the United States. While it is getting harder to do business in the United States, you can still open a Wyoming LLC in a day. This Wyoming LLC inherently has a lot of tax benefits. It will make you allowed and able to use US processors for payments and US-based channels for business. However, what is true is that the United States is cracking down on shell companies. However, there are ways to get around that, and of course, you do not always need a US LLC. Number five is that the United States is somehow less grounded than it was a decade ago. Now, many people are selling fear now, right, as it is popular to sell fear. I believe that the first time privacy went away in the United States was in 2001. So this problem has been here far longer than the people peddling second passports and peddling second residencies. The people that sell you on fear are inherently grifters that have nothing better to sell you on, as they do not have the true information on the ground that they say they do. Their team may, and they may regurgitate what their team says. However, they are not living that that life anymore. They've probably moved to a stable country. I'll give an example. Actually, no, I won't, because I don't want to cease and desist letter. I don't want to have to deal with that headache. But you know who you are. You are selling fear because you have nothing better to sell. And this is inherently damaging to your brand. And I would recommend to all those people, stop, because you're going to ruin your brand. And you did invariably create a space for me to do this. So I don't want you to ruin your brand. But if you do, that's your prerogative. Number 7 is that the United States is somehow inferior to developing economies. I think there are different use cases. There is no inferior or superior. There are different use cases for developing economies and the United States. Developing economies inherently have more growth potential as they are smaller economies, but they have less liquidity, less ability to give cheap loans. The United States has some of the cheapest capital in the world as they set the baseline interest rate. That is something you should definitely think about. The United States sets the baseline interest rate, and so any country that is going below, they have to have a strong backing for that. And of course, many countries do. If you'd like, I can give you the top 5 lowest pressure and lowest interest rate loan options in the world. If you'd like that, comment down below. And also, if you're looking for 15 minutes of one-on-one conversation with me personally, you can comment 1 to gain a free 15 minutes conversation to tailor your international plan and your international experience through the lens of someone who has lived this life. The next thing that I'd like to go over is inherently how systems are operating in the United States. Many people say that banks are failing a lot in the United States. That's true. However, if you look at the market capitalization of those banks, they were very small banks. If you look at the stable banks, they are not doing as poorly as you think they are. And that's number 8. Banks do not do as poorly in the United States as people think. And this is important because if you are looking at banking in the United States and all you know is fear-based selling of US banks are collapsing, this and that, and all you look at is Silicon Valley Bank, well, if we looked at that, we could look at UBS in Switzerland and show that realistically the banking destinations you think are safe are not, all of them are not safe, and all of them lack the liquidity that you think they do. However, that is not something to be scared about, because all you gotta do is have clear banking options that are well funded and that have a moat that is, and a large loan portfolio that is paying them monthly. Number 9 is the fact that many folks are dealing with homelessness, and that is true. I'll give you the exact number of homeless Americans in the United States. However, many people are not struggling in the same way that they are in poverty-stricken countries. So a homeless American may be earning $150K a year in San Francisco, and that's not necessarily struggling. That is intentionally choosing to be homeless for financial gain. And there is a hustle culture in the United States that is unheard of in other countries, and that does create the headlines of hundreds of thousands of homeless people in America. However, the vast majority of those homeless people do live lives that a lot of people would dream of, because they can, get drugs and get all of these things that are not necessarily available to poorer individuals. Now, am I saying that I condone drug use? No, I do not believe so. But I am saying that they're not poor. They're not struggling on the streets. They're just panhandling and being lazy, realistically. While I think that there is homelessness that is actually a thing in developing countries, in the United States, I do believe it is a choice as well. The United States is a welfare economy. That's number 10. The welfare state of the United States is large. It's one of the largest in the world, in fact. We spend more on healthcare per capita, even government spending, than any other country in the world. And yet, we do not have free healthcare. We do not have large amounts of social cohesion, and that's largely to do with the fact that the United States is indeed a corporatocracy. And as a business owner myself, I do not believe that corporatocracies work in the long term, as the constituents become so poor that the gap, you don't have anyone to buy your product. Okay, great, you have money. Okay, what are you going to do with it? You don't have a user base to make you more money. You're going to give people money, just, be a rich person giving people money and hoping that they use it on something good. Well, that's how desperation starts, and that's how the rhetoric of eat the rich and blah, blah, blah happens. There are countries where there is no rhetoric of eat the rich. There are no rhetoric of wealth being a bad thing. And those countries inherently are where I go, because I believe that wealth comes with moral responsibility, and moral responsibility means donating, means integrating with humanity. And many of the people I know personally who have millions of dollars are not bad people. They are unfairly targeted by taxation, by corrupt states that want to take their money. And the United States, to give you a bonus anecdote, the United States is a corrupt country, and I can prove it, but I will do that in a separate video, which will be linked up above. I appreciate you watching. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments down below. This has been the Traveling Report. If you appreciated this video, I would appreciate a like. If you really enjoyed it, I would appreciate a share. And if you want to join me on this journey of globalization, I would appreciate you giving me a subscription. This has been the Traveling Report, signing off.